Fantastic. Okay. Well, welcome everyone for the next episode of Creative Talk, episode 2. Although, since this is our episode 2, our official episode 2, many of you, we've done this quite a few times already. At the very least, I think we've done at least like 20 different interviews in the past, but all of that has been kind of just me practicing, working things out, all of us experiencing what this whole new thing is, and really to kind of prepare us for these wonderful recorded interviews. But it's an absolute pleasure for me, an honor really, to introduce Anthony DiBiase. So Anthony, say hey for everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Now, let me do a quick introduction. I've known Anthony for, get this, Anthony, 24 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I'm sure you remember, I like to think you do remember, the very first time you and I met was at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport for my job interview.
Yes.
Back in 1998. And, that was a job interview for Wonderman Cato Johnson, as you were building out the team out here in Irvine, California.
Yep.
Anthony and I worked together for a total of 9 years with 2 different ad agencies, WCJ and Y&R Advertising. But since then, man, Anthony, you've continued to be a mentor of mine and a great friend. So it's an absolute honor for me to kind of have you as a guest here at Creative Talk. You're in a room full of designers, creatives, next generation of problem solvers. Our relationship, our collaboration together has influenced me exactly on how I've become a teacher, a mentor, a leader to so many of the people that you're seeing here. So welcome to Creative Talk.
Well, thank you, Fernando. You've always been an inspiration to me from the very beginning.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started.
All right, let's get started. Well, I guess first and foremost, let me just kind of set the tone a little bit. As I'd mentioned to you, this is started off as a classroom setting. This was you're in a room full of next generation creatives, a couple of alumni, a couple of professionals here also. Certainly a room full of just young next gen, and the people who's going to really kind of advance this industry that you and I love so much forward. And that's the idea behind these Creative Talks, is really to kind of share your story, our story, to really kind of help the next generation to create their own set of creative stories. So that being said, let's go back in time a little bit, man. Before you were a senior level creative director, how did you get your start in the creative industry?
Well, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer at the beginning, and I actually did. I even took a couple of introductory law courses, and then I started not hanging out, but I started being exposed to what they're like, and I couldn't run away faster. Not that there's anything wrong with them, it's just not what I wanted. I actually got some training at a different college. So I left the college I was at, I went to a different college, took some courses. I loved it, loved the copywriting aspect of it. I was able to go work at an agency for a semester, and that was great. Loved it. Got my first job, and that was the toughest thing I ever did, getting my first job. So don't anybody be discouraged.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, right? So there's that level of love and kind of just really passion to being a creative, and the idea of problem solving with our creative abilities. And as you and I know, as much as we love doing that, it's not easy. It's not easy to do it, and let alone it's not easy to find opportunities to be able to do it. Your first job, kind of getting to do this, how did that come about? What was the breadcrumbs that led up to that opportunity?
As part of the course, our instructor did exactly what you did, which is tell us, it was near the end of the year, the instructor told us about 2 positions that were available at this agency in Toronto. The economic situation back then was horrible. Everybody was depressed. Everybody was down on the lack of opportunities. I remember asking my classmates, hey, are you going to apply for that position? Everybody I talked to, and it was a very small class, said no, and everybody was discouraged. So on the last day, you could send in an introductory letter I was working night shifts at this factory, and I wrote it, and I was off at 7 a.m. and I got to the agency before 8, handed it to the receptionist. Next thing you know, I get a call, but I was at home, so my grandmother, who was as mean as a snake and couldn't speak any English, told them where to go, I guess. So a couple of calls later, I finally figured out what was going on, and they asked me to come in for an interview. Before the interview ended, I asked them, has anyone else for my program applied? And she told me, yes, everyone. So, don't kid yourself. Things can get very competitive, and that's a good thing because there aren't a lot of good positions around. And so you should take it seriously. You should try your best, and you should expect everyone else to try their best too, even if they're not in your class. There's plenty of people out there who want that position. So be prepared. This was in Canada, and I worked on the New Taste Coke campaign, which ended up in the marketing history books as the biggest failure ever.
Well, let's okay. So that first story, man, it resonates, and I think this is part of the base of our friendship is that when everybody's saying no, you go say yes.
I don't care whether you're a copywriter, a designer, an art director, or whatever you want to be in the creative space. I don't think you'd be doing this if you didn't think that you could get someone's attention. I mean, would everybody agree? Mm-hmm. Probably, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you don't think you can get someone's attention through your creativity, then what are you doing in this class? The first time you have to use that is to get your first job. There's lots of rules, there's lots of processes, there's lots of expectations, especially if you've, interviewed for jobs before, and you can take those and throw them all out because nothing else matters more than getting that first interview and making a good impression, and then doing that as many times as it takes to be able to get what you want.
There's a story that you told me many years ago. This is when we first started working together, and to this day, I share this story with my class. This January marks my 20-year anniversary in teaching. Wow. Believe it or not. Right? It's kind of crazy.
That's great, Fernando.
But I remember you sat me down. We were sitting around in your office, and you painted this picture for me, and you said, and this was back when we were young in the late 90s, where we're going out to nightclubs and bars was a thing, right?
And I had a full wet bar in my office.
Yeah. Yep. And you said to me, okay, Fernando, let me paint this picture for you. Imagine you yourself going to a club, and maybe the owner of the club, and you'd call them earlier and you say, okay, you're going to put your name on the list so you don't have to wait in line. And you get there, and the bouncer is being a real jerk, and he says, I don't see your name on the list. And you ask me, he goes, so now what would you do at that point? Yeah. Do you now just turn around to your friends and be like, you know what? My name's not on a list. Our name's not on a list. That guy's being a jerk. My friend forgot, blah, 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 all these reasons. Or are you the type of person that's going to go up to the bouncer and be like, here's a 50, or here's a, or you look over there and then sneak in, or, and you went as far as you said, or you're going to take a swing back and give him a pop so that you can go, like, what will you do to get in that bar, to get in that club? Yeah. And I never forgot that scenario. Yeah. Because it really kind of paints the picture of, like, if you want to do something, to get into something, you got to really ask yourself that hard question. It's like, what are you willing to do to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd forgotten about that story, but it's the same thing when you work day in, day out, right? So what are you going to do to achieve that goal for your client? What are you going to do to cut through all the nonsense? What is it that you're going to do? If it was all written down, it would be easy. Sometimes you have to flip it. Sometimes you have to do what they don't expect. Sometimes you have to be cocky about it. Sometimes you have to be, demure about it. It's, what is it going to take to get through on the goal you want? Be it an ad, a campaign, or a job interview. You need to stand out. because you won't have a chance to state your case or to show your genius if you don't even get noticed.
Mhm.
So
after, so you said you were in Toronto. It was your next adventure out is into California. What
yeah.
what was those breadcrumbs? What led you to that opportunity into California?
Yeah. So I was going to quit that agency. I was just bored with the type of work that we had. And at the last minute, we got this RFP out of California for ARCO AMPM. And it was a really well-written brief in the RFP. And right in the RFP, it said, the agency that comes up with the best creative will win. And I'd never seen it called out like that. That was pretty ballsy. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm not going to leave just yet. Let's fly down there. Let's meet this client. Let's see what it's all about. I'm prepared to kick his ass with all kinds of really tough questions, because if you're going to ask for someone to do their best and really mean it, you better be ready to ride along with that, not just some BS posturing. It's a big risk, and you better be ready to handle that. So a big risk for the creatives, a big risk for the client, a big risk for the agency, what have you, if you're really, really going to do your best. So we flew down there, and I was impressed with this guy. I said, wow, this is legit. We started working on the campaign, and then we pitched against 3 other really, really big shops in the US. After we pitched, this client came out and said, oh, yeah, that went really well. Can you just hang out in the lobby a little bit? Long story short, we got the business. We worked on the business for 2-3 years, and I flew down to California for work, and I loved it down here. The Taco Bell account, the international Taco Bell account, was based in Chicago with Wonderman. They had all the creatives, production and studio in Chicago, and just the account people down in Irvine. The manager of the office got an opportunity to start a full-time, full-service agency. So she remembered me from that pitch, and these guys came up from New York to see if I wanted the job, and I turned them down because I thought, there's no way. I'm 38 years old. There's no way I'm going to pick up everything up and just move. My wife at the time, I just thought, well, there's no way she's going to want to move. And then I waited 2 weeks, and then I was telling her about it, and I said, what about that? She said, yeah, sure. So I couldn't call those guys back fast enough, and that's how it got started. That's how we built that agency, from just account servicing to account creative studio production, and then on and on and on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. I mean, that was the wormhole for me. Right.
Well, the trouble was that I could not find, because Orange County wasn't like it is today. Orange County was a ghost town. There wasn't any creative going on. I mean, there was a couple of small agencies, but we couldn't find any good creatives, and we were desperate. And so that's why I was willing to, have an interview in between flights in the Detroit airport. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Well, me too, man. And everybody in this room is equally glad.
True. Yeah.
I think about that all the time, and I'm sure as we can always look back and retrospect, those forks in the road of our career, and the kind of ripple effect that they've had, and this is one big one. As you were building out this team, from the ground up, with Taco Bell and WCJ, you've impacted so many different lives, from Lane, Kristen, Kurt. I mean, I can go down the list, Stan, and we were in our early 20s, and we were all over the place. And you were like a Pied Piper, right? you whistled, and
we had a good group. Group.
Well, so that's my next set of questions. As you, and this is not the first or last time you built out a team from the ground up, as you are building out teams, and you always had this, you're always very inspirational and motivational for the young generation, including myself. What were some of the things that you were kind of keeping an eye out for as you would build out these teams?
2 things: a minimum level of expertise, and you could call that talent, um, you know, the ability to, if you're a writer, the ability to write. If you're an art director, the ability to art direct, designer / whatever it is, you have to have come in with a minimum level of that. But what I was always most interested in was, would this person be able to grow with the challenges in front of them? Because I didn't know what the challenges were. I just knew that, man, we better be ready, because who knows what's going to happen on this roller coaster. And I mean, later on, when I, learned a little bit about psychology, it was what I go back now and think I was looking for was an open mindset. In other words, are you willing to put your ego away, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, try new concepts, and do you have the guts to do what it takes to really try your best on something? So that's why the creative position is so different than most other jobs out there, is that you can't do what everybody else has done. That's not what you're being paid for. You have to have the guts to step out, to try something that, you're going to be thinking, oh boy, are they going to think I'm crazy? Are they going to think I'm stupid? What if they don't like it? So that takes a lot of courage and a lot of hard work to be absolutely sure that you've turned over every stone, you've looked under every rock. So I was looking for people with, a minimum level of expertise in the field that they were in, and a whole bunch of integrity, and some guts to be able to say, yeah, I'll handle it. We'll figure it out. We don't know what the answer is right now, but we'll figure it out. So that's what I look for. That's what I always look for.
Yeah.
The truth.
And you know what? That's so appropriate now, especially now, right? We can look at our current state of our industry as far as, the not even just the way things are being problem solved from a creative standpoint, but the media and the medium that we what we have versus what we had before. For example, like social media, for example, where everything feels like everything has to be just right and perfect. And we're talking to a group of young designers, young creatives here, where it's almost paralyzing to think that everything has to be perfect right away, straight out the gates, because that's what you see out there. Can you talk about that a little bit? To like, it's okay to suck, basically, right? It's okay to.
I mean, you have to. I mean, unless it's some, just out of the ordinary, some special gift that somebody has. I've never seen it. I mean, I've seen some very talented people, but the pure talent, or should I say talent alone, if that's what your plan is, oh my God, you better be God's gift to creative, because there's a lot of other things important as well. The ability to keep trying, to keep working at it, to look for something new, to find a new angle, to find a fresh way, to turn it upside down, inside out, whatever you need to do. That's you have to be determined. You can't quit. Deadlines are always crazy. You give me a month to do something, the deadline's crazy. You give me 2 minutes to do something, the deadline's crazy. So you have to be able to pick your spots, because not everything can be a battle. Not everything can be my last ditch effort. And you have to figure out how to get done what you need to get done on that particular project. That's easy to slide into the whole mediocrity thing, and then you won't be around. I'm sure none of you would do that, but you have to pick your spots, understand, hey, if that's the deadline, that's the deadline. Although you could always ask, are you sure we can get more time from this? Because, there's never enough time to do it the first time, but there's always enough time to do it over again. Right?
To fix it, right?
Let's be honest about that.
Yeah.
I feel bad for people in the industry today. The timelines really are crazier. Everything is disposable. Everything has to be right now. But then, imagine working on a campaign that you've been working on for 6 months. The pressure that you're going to feel at, oops, it didn't work, versus, well, let's do a social post today and let's do one tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So it all kind of balances out. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The pendulum is always swinging from one end to another, and hopefully you get to ride that pendulum and have a good career along the way.
Yeah.
And it's not a generational thing. I think it's everyone goes through this. I mean, it doesn't matter what age you're at, no matter what part of your career you're at, you feel like the mistakes that you made is so, oh my gosh, so grand and so big, or the misunderstanding or the misstep, and we beat each other up, we beat ourselves up. But from that, first of all, what are some of the most common thing and misunderstanding you've come across?
I think you said it. I mean, if you're not making big mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. You're playing it safe. If you're not making big mistakes, you're playing it safe. Now, mind you, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that if you're working for some idiot who's all about just looking good to their boss as opposed to getting some original work done. You have to sort that out for yourself. Yeah, you're going to make mistakes, plenty of them. But as long as you take responsibility for them, learn from them, move on, try again. Don't believe anybody that if they tell you you're not going to make big mistakes. Everybody makes big mistakes. And it's actually during those times that people will see what you're made of. For example, you could book your honeymoon at a hotel, spend more money than you ever thought you could spend on something, and then all of a sudden the hotel screws up. Well, stuff happens.
Yeah.
What are they going to do once they've screwed up? Are they going to show themselves to be the kind of people you expect them to be, or something less? It's the same thing with you. Yeah, you're going to screw up. What are you going to do about it afterwards?
Yeah.
How are you going to get past it? Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go at it again.
Yeah. Are you going to own it?
Yeah.
How are you going to own it? Let me quickly interject a story here. One of the more story that resonates with me within my career, when I worked for David Angelo of David and Goliath, and David.
Yeah. I heard he's coming back.
Really?
Yeah. For some ridiculous amount of money.
It's like it's once you try to get out, but they pull you back in. But I was working on the Carl's Jr. account with David and Goliath, and there was a mistake on a retouching project that I was in charge of, and it's right there, printed right there. So it was a standee, and the halo wasn't right, and so people were like, "Oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What are you gonna do, Fernando?" And yeah, don't get me wrong, I was scared shitless. Right. But I walked into David's office and I said, David, I would rather have you hear it from me than anybody else. This is where we're at. Here's the standee. Here's where the mistakes has happened. Of course, I was like, it looks good, but mistake was made. And he looked at me and he said, okay, thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
And that was it. And
that's why I love you, man.
Well, when I came out of that office, people were like, people's heads have rolled to something smaller than that, Fernando.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure.
But if you own it, it's...
You're just giving me chills about it, because that is so, to me, that's the most important thing. Own it. Everybody makes mistakes. Yeah. Own it. And move on.
Well, okay, so I'm in the tail end of my questions, and I want to turn it over to the group here for any of their questions. But the last, I have two last questions, but the first of the last is, Anthony, as you are able to look back in your career, if there is one thing that you could kind of whisper into your younger self back in the day, what would that be?
Oh, geez. That's a tough one. I was thinking about this question before, and I don't have any regrets. I wouldn't do anything differently. The only thing that I can think of is, through my career, I've been stupid lucky to be in some situations that were just unbelievably special. And when you're in up to your eyeballs in that situation, you know it's good, but because you don't have the right perspective, you're not old enough, you haven't experienced enough things, you have nothing to compare it to. So you think, oh wow, well, everything's going to be this great. And that's not true. And if I could go back, I would just take more time to just sit down and just think, wow, how special is this? That's it. Everything else, what are you going to do? If I fixed all the mistakes I made the first time, I'd probably have a whole new set of mistakes. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, that's certainly. I mean, you know what? 1998 and that first few years was certainly special, my friend.
Yeah.
And so, all right, thank you. Okay, I want to turn it over to the class, to the group. Any questions, thoughts, comments for Anthony? You can. I'd actually rather have you ask yourself as opposed to put it in the chat. So go ahead and unmute yourself. Go ahead, Amy.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you, first of all, for coming to talk to us. My question is, are there any rookie mistakes that you've seen junior designers make that I wouldn't say like is a deal breaker, but is something that we should be aware of?
Do you mean in your first job or in something else?
Give
me a context.
First job, but I would say mostly just in general.
Okay, so well, I mean, you're working as a designer or a writer, right? That's what you mean? Yeah. Probably to not be afraid to share your work and get feedback from your work, from your colleagues, whether it's the people in the creative department, and maybe we could talk about this some other day, but and account people have a really bad reputation in the business. It's too bad, because creatives who have worked with poor account people will have that opinion. But when you've had a chance to work with absolutely wonderful account people, you know that they're your partners. You know that you rely on each other. So, I've seen people make the mistake of being too precious with their work, kind of keeping out, it's not ready, it's not ready, it's not ready. And then, timeline's up, there's no time to change anything or adjust anything or get any feedback. And then all of a sudden somebody might give you some good, valid feedback. And because you're at the end of your timeline, you want to push back on it. That's the one mistake. The other mistake is not paying attention to how to present your work. And presenting your work doesn't mean showing your work, doesn't mean telling them about the process you went through. That's not at all what presenting your work is. Presenting your work is explaining it, saying the things to whoever you're showing it to, so that they'll understand that what you did actually meets their goals based on the brief. And yes, you always have to have a brief. I don't care if it's intuitive, it's in your gut. Every single creative I know works with a strategy. They may not realize it because it's not written down, or they haven't written it down for themselves, or it's not written down for them, but there's a strategy that they're working from. Just make sure that's going to meet the client's goals or the project's goals, whatever. Mm-hmm. So those are the two.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Yeah, I attest to the whole trusting of account. I mean, I trusted one account person so much that I married her. Which Anthony which Anthony knows, because Anthony's worked with Dia. Yeah. So Tati.
Hi. I just have a question. It's kind of like on the opposite scale of what Amy asked. What are the qualities of like someone who like stands out of the crowd? Like, what do you see in an individual that just kind of goes above and beyond?
Yeah, so it's different for everybody, and it's different in the situation. So if you look at every single challenge or opportunity that you have in front of you, you have to work out for yourself what's going to make the desired impact in that context. So if you came to work for me let's say we were having an interview. Yes, I would look through your portfolio, and then I would ask you also, so show me some of the work that you didn't do in class, or you didn't do for what are you excited by? What kind of work do you like? Even though you may not be doing this particular work, but what excites you about the work you see? What do you aspire to? And then somehow during the course of that conversation, just like I was mentioning before, I would be trying to kind of figure out, are you open-minded? Do you have enough courage? Are you going to stand by your work, or are you going to cave? Or are you going to be an a-hole about your work and not accept any feedback, especially from the creative director? So that's what I'd be looking for. And it's different in every single situation. If you're having an interview somewhere, understand that there's a whole dynamic to doing a good interview, but that also depends on who you're interviewing with, right? Maybe they want to talk about themselves the whole time. Yeah, okay, well, what are you going to do? Tell them how to do their own interview? Who knows? Everybody thinks they're great at interviewing, and it's not always the case. So it depends. Every situation is different. Like every brief that you would get for a particular piece of work would be different. Different context, different strategy. How are you going to go at it? What's the execution going to be like? How much time you have, how much money you have. It all depends what impression you want to create. You might want to create the impression of, hey, I'm a good team player. Or you might want to create the impression, I have leadership qualities. Or you might want to create the impression, yeah, I might be, shy and not bold, but I have solid work. Well, okay, so figure it out. But you have to be mindful of what it is that you need and what it is that you want and the challenge in front of you. It's not, well, I'm always going to be this way, or I'm always going to be that way. This will work in every situation. Well, no.
And that that kind of connects back to an earlier answer where that's part of your strategy.
Yeah.
Right. That it becomes part of what you are able to bring to the table, what you're able to convey to your clients, to your team. That's part of the strategy.
I'll tell you one thing, which would stand out for me, is new business. I love new business. That's all by the end of my career, that's all I wanted to work on. I didn't want to work on anything else. Let's say as a junior creative somewhere, or any level of creative, volunteer to be on new business pitches. You will learn so much. It's the best stage you have to grab some of the spotlight in some way, shape, or form. Work on new business. When everybody else is too scared to put their hand up, you be first to put your hand up. That sends a message. Yeah. Be first. When everybody else is running the other way, you stand there, or you run the other way. Don't follow the crowd. Nobody stands out in a crowd.
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps here because I have a question to the team here. How much of what Anthony is saying is making sense to you guys of how I've been teaching, I've been managing and leading this group. I tell you, man, you've been such an incredible influence in my career, and I hope it's apparent to everybody here that there's a lot of parallelism to what you've been talking about. So, any other questions? Last set of questions for Anthony from the group.
Yeah, I'll ask you one, Anthony. Don't mind.
Yeah.
What mistake or failure you think taught you the most?
Obviously, from the biggest mistakes I've made, those taught me the most. I can remember one time standing in the parking lot at our first office on Irvine Center Drive, and it was some catastrophic craziness going on, and we were fighting with Chicago to take over. They wanted the business back once they found out how much money could be made, and I was having a few challenges thrown my way, and I remember getting off this phone call, taking a second, and saying to myself, almost out loud, I bet, okay, that's it, bring it on. Give me the worst. You know what? It got a lot worse. So the lesson for me was don't think you can handle it all. Be smart about it, or you'll drive yourself crazy, or you'll get a divorce, or you'll start drinking, or who knows what.
Or all of the above.
Or all of the above, yeah, if you're lucky. Yeah, that's probably don't think you can do it all alone, because you can't. No one can.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Amadeus. All right. That was a great question, everyone. Any other last questions before I ask my last question to Anthony, and we'll close up? No. All right, Anthony. So I try to ask this question in all of our Creative Talk interviews. And you talked a little bit about this as far as being lucky, but you talk a lot about also just hard work and being smart. So within your career thus far, how do you gauge that? Are you lucky? Are you just a hard worker?
No, trust me. I'm stupid lucky. There have been so many times when anything could have gone, it's 50-50, and sometimes I think about those times and I think, oh my God, just a tremendous amount of luck. On top of that, it's hard work, and not just in the field, in your craft. If I could say one thing to people, take every single course you can to learn about your own emotional intelligence, because next to your talent, the level of emotional intelligence you have is probably the greatest indicator of what your future success will be. In other words, the more emotional intelligence you have, the more successful you'll be. Was I the best writer? No. I certainly wasn't the best art director. Yeah, by a long shot, I'd say. But there's some other things. Was I good enough? Yeah, I was pretty good. I would take on challenges and come through, especially when it came to new business. But yeah, sorry, that's it, man.
No, that was perfect.
It's hard work, determined, and being able to be open to say what's really going on. Is this a fairy tale I'm telling myself? Let me ask for real feedback from the people I trust. Where can I learn? Where can I get better? How could I have handled that better? That's that. In addition to your craft, whatever that is. And then you have to be lucky, because there are some people that are way more talented, way more determined, work harder, and then they get their shot and it doesn't work out for one day. It's kind of like an Olympic athlete. You train, and then it comes down to 10 seconds every 4 years. Wow, it's crazy.
Well, this has been amazing, Anthony. I know that you and I have continued to talk. Like I said, you and I've continued to be friends. We don't talk often enough, I think, but man, I'm so grateful for your time, for you to be able to share your stories, your insight with this group. And you know what, we're recording this, so this is going to continue to touch other people's lives and continue to make an impact. But thank you so much, Anthony. Really, really appreciate it.
I'm honored to be here, Fernando, and you've always been an inspiration to me. I've talked about you many times. And by the way, if anybody has, share my email. And if anybody has any other questions or what have you, or you're coming up against a tough situation at work or what have you, send me an email or give me a call, or we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Your LinkedIn profile is blowing up, I know, at this point, because everybody is.
Oh my God, those are all lies.
But definitely, everyone get connected with Anthony. He's a as you know, and as I can attest, a really great guy to be connected with, to continue to grow your network with. He too is obviously well respected within the industry. and full of information and feedback and insights that everyone can benefit from. So please, let's give it up for Anthony. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Fernando.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
great.
Well, let me close this up. So, I wanted to thank you, Anthony. I want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you. Give some credits out to Leilani Diaz, who is our graphic designer and editor, along with Jamie Lynn Garcia, who is our social media coordinator, and the whole production team. The production team is the three of us. So, I'm going to do what they do, hit subscribe, so that you can get your future episodes of Creative Talk, as this ends our episode 2. Thank you, everyone, and stay awesome and stay extraordinary.